Please note that this video contains spoilers for the subject and the series and/or franchise leading up to this entry. Put off by how long this video is? Don't worry, I try to jam-pack my videos with as much content and as much detail as I possibly can. Anything I feel I can comment on and that I feel you might be interested in, I pretty much put in the video. I try not to repeat myself and talk fairly fast. I either have or will cover other parts of this franchise, and this video either is or will be linked below. I'm not going to restate here what I did or will say in the other video. These videos get long enough as it is. I've reviewed other parts of this franchise. The links are in the description box. Ant-Man and the Wasp Thoughts. And I will go directly into notes taken while watching. Now, like the first one, the 3D is great, and you know, it's these two movies are really made for 3D. You know, the depth, yeah, just, you know, it genuinely feels like something is as big or as small as it looks on screen, which, yeah, it's you know, if you are watching this and you haven't yet watched the film and you're trying to figure out 3D or not, if you ever watch 3D movies, this is one you should watch in 3D. Now, and yeah, for the rest of this, I'm going to be talking as though, you know, I'm not going to explain everything. If you haven't watched the movie, I'm not sure how much of this video is going to make sense to you. That's how I do these thoughts videos. Now, we open on a flashback of Janet right away, and we get to see her with Hank and with young Hope. I really appreciate that. That really, I mean, both of these movies are about family. And yeah, where the first one was especially about this thing of like the father not wanting to disappoint the daughter and not wanting, you know, when you see Scott with Cassie, you know, basically the great fear is that Cassie will grow as distant towards Scott as Hope has towards Hank, which is also something I really love, that the relationship between Hank and Hope is better in this. But yeah, you know, in this one you also have you have Janet become an actual character. It's not just someone we see in a suit briefly that one time. You know, let's see, the thing. Yeah, you know, the entire movie is basically about, you know, from the point of view of the good guys. The movie is about getting Janet back, saving Janet, and that's, you know, the emotional core of the whole film is making sure that Janet gets home, and also doing so whilst not risking Scott going back to prison, so, you know, so that he also can be home, be with his daughter. And I mean, the scene is just a few minutes long, maybe 2 minutes or something, but yeah, you know, you get how, you know, even back then Hank was a little, you know, he didn't want Hope to know what was going on, you know, but there clearly is love between, and that's also, I really appreciate the chemistry between the two. That's incredibly important in this kind of thing. And yeah, I think it's still recording. Not all movies like this get that right. This one does, and absolutely nails it. I forget, have they worked together before? Has there been a movie where Michael Douglas and Michelle Pfeiffer had to appear to like each other? I can't offhand pinpoint one. I really should have looked that up before watching it. Anyway, the yeah, with Hank, there's clearly this kind of, they respect each other and they really love each other, and with young Hope, she's, yeah, that really, the kind of parent who'll, make jokes to make their little kid laugh and smile, and she delivered it perfectly too. The whole, oh, I'll just fall asleep, I don't know, just yeah, spot on. I can't do the same, but yeah. And I appreciate that we see the deactivation of the Soviet missile again, but now with lines, and I think the voiceover is different too. It's effective in both of these movies, and now that they've cast the actress for it, yeah, yeah, really really good stuff. And the first time we see Scott, or is that? I think the first time we really see him in this, first you can't quite tell what's going on. It's like, oh, where's the map? And actually, yeah, the first thing you think is like, oh no, he's stealing again, isn't he? He's, and then like, map. What do you mean map? Because we know he's not working with Hank and Hope. We've already seen the bit where I believe we already know by then. But then, then we see Cassie is down there, and then, there's this, oh, it's the ant, and you see this cardboard ant, and it's like he's playing, they're playing a game. She gets to go on a mission with her superhero daddy, and that's just so perfect. And so many movies would have gone for like really obnoxious jokes there or something, but I mean, there are a few jokes in the scene, but it's really heartwarming and sweet, and it is the kind of thing where, like, in the first movie, he didn't get to spend very much time with her because of the strained relationship between him, his ex, and his ex's cop fiance. I think they're engaged. And to see him and Cassie together in this, just, yeah, it is so sweet. And I like, I think in both of these movies she does really well, the actress. I think she has a few more lines in this and more screen time as well, but I'm not always the best judge of that. But yeah, I think she really, they gave her more to do because they could tell she could pull it off. Let's bounce before the popo come back. I see that someone knows that if the popo pull you over, the first call's to your lawyer, not your mom. And I love how the FBI agent, apparently he's called Jimmy. I'm gonna call him the FBI agent Jimmy. I don't remember. I didn't always remember when I noted what his name was. I really love how, at first he genuinely seems like he's going to explain it at Child's level. Honestly, at first I thought that the joke was going to be that she would show in explaining back that she completely understands what's going on, but, instead just, well, you know how in your kindergarten, or in school, yeah, I bet they have rules like you can't draw on the walls. Well, your daddy went to Germany and drew on the wall with Captain America. And then he goes into this, he even like minor details of this law. Yeah, I thought it was a pretty good bit. It really worked, I thought. And now we see that yeah, the ex and the cop that she's with both really really love Scott, and my guess is the writers thought that it would be a funny contrast to the first one where they're like trying to kick him out of their house and such. Personally, I think it was a funny contrast, and also just it's adorable. It's just everybody likes Scott. Everybody likes or loves Scott. That's really really sweet in this movie. How in both of these he's the everyman, but in this and in the first one certainly Lewis likes him, and I eventually hope I still don't when I watch the first movie I don't see how they end up together at all. It was a huge surprise to me when I first watched it. Anyway, yeah, the it's yeah, in the first one, some people certainly like him, and Cassie does. Cassie definitely loves him, but in this, it's basically like even Ghost is kind of nice to him at least the first time, But yeah, it's just the fact that and some people are like that. Some people, the father and his ex, who's the mother, and the new stepdad, all really get along and give each other hugs, and I just thought it was really fun, and I'm also glad I like to see Judy Greer smile. I think yeah, that was I don't think I'm gonna finish that thought. The let's see, she does play the angry kind of ex as well though, but yeah, it was really cute how they big hug, another big hug, and just yeah. And I really like the running gag of the magic tricks, how Scott is like, do you know how much time I've had to pass where I need to stay in my home? I've taught myself, what was it, in close magic, something like that, and he's like, he gets the card out, and then I'm gonna throw up, and vomits up the cards, and I think the cop is like, how did you do that? And then Jamie's like, oh man, how did you do that? And then later you see he's working on learning the magic tricks at his desk, and just yeah. And it is one of those things, personally I'm not into magic, the I don't, other people enjoy it. I I'm very happy with that. It's not really personally for me, but yeah, it is when you see someone do magic like that. Oh, how did he do that? It's not. I'm not personally going to go out and try to learn it myself or something, but yeah, I know tons of people who, if they saw a regular Joe just pulling off magic tricks like that, they'd be like, "Could I learn how to do that?" And just yeah. Okay, I wrote something about 4 kids in my notes. I don't know what that means. Maybe I'll think of it later. And we're told if Scott breaks parole, he gets a minimum of 20 years in prison, which is, again, it's a good... I don't understand people who say that this movie had no stakes. Do you look me in the eye? Yes, I, I defy you to. Somehow you'll be able to look into my eye and tell me straight that you don't care whether or not Cassie gets to be with her father. That's just, if you say no, I don't even know. Just, whatever. Some people live their lives as stone golems, but just, no, I don't. Look, it's not, the scope, the stakes are not the universe, or half it. Anyway, but that's part of the point of the movie, that we're, okay, now we had this huge thing, now let's take a more, not such a big, and the trailers told you that that was what it was gonna be. Nobody watched this movie and were like completely surprised that it's not, Infinity War point, 0.5 or whatever. Anyway, the yeah, and we have the psychic link between Scott and Janet. I quite like that. How he's sitting there in the tub, and then briefly gets like a flashback to, excuse me, in the first movie when he was going through the quantum realm, and then, excuse me, like, what is it? Like, she kind of sort of talks to him, and then he's seeing something that Janet did. And also, I didn't note it, but I do really like later when Scott is like, when they're talking about, and Hope is like, I always hid there. And then he's like, I don't think he understood the rules of that game. that's that's a really good, that's quite funny. And yeah, it is, excuse me, it is the kind of thing where, like, a child will, to make absolutely certain that their parent can find them, they'll hide in a really obvious place. Or I mean, essentially, they weren't really playing hide and go seek as much as it was just, it was an excuse for that kind of interaction, basically. And yeah, I thought it was really great. And how she, he calls and it's like, when I'm saying it out loud, I can tell I'm sorry, this was stupid. I shouldn't have made this, I shouldn't have left this voicemail. I'm sorry. Goodbye. And he hangs up, and then, and then when it comes, the Hope is like, no, look, this was actually a memory. But when, yeah, and then he's like sitting there watching TV and like swats at like either a flying ant, it's a flying ant, it's a wasp, it's something, and like gets a little sting here, and he's like, ah, and then he falls over. After the events of the first film, wouldn't you kind of be like, that's probably not an accident, especially considering he just called them, But yeah, I figure it's probably Wasp, and she's using like, yeah, she's using the stinger to knock him out like that. But yeah, was that entirely necessary? I mean, I guess, yeah. I mean, I guess the idea is, if she just grew to natural size and said, "We got your message. You're onto something. Come with me." He would have been like, "I can't come with you. There's this brace on my leg, on my ankle," and then she would have to be, "No, no, look, it's okay. We'll have this ant do what you do," and he'd be like, "I don't. That's not gonna work. And what if they come back and all this?" And instead, with him just waking up like that, yeah, and yeah, the first time Scott meets Hope, he wakes up near her like in the first, but now they're in a car, and moments later it turns out that they're tiny. That was also really good. What was it, like pigeons? I think pigeons come in, and that was also, I didn't note that for the ending, but the bit where they're at like a drive-in theater, and they're in their tiny cars, and it's a laptop. That's a pretty good way to replicate the drive-in experience. And do drive-ins still exist? If they do, I mean, the movie he shows her is this kind of, it's either a giant ant or a tiny person movie, and even if they would show that in a drive-in theater in 2018, they would not let Cassie in. And yeah, he knows that she would really dig that, same as she really loved that hideous, little, what's it called, stuffed animal that he gave her in the first one. So, and we find out that there's going to be a human-sized ant that will act like Scott, so that the ankle bracelet isn't just lying in place for all that time. And yeah, I think this is probably also where some people were like, okay, I'm sorry, that's too far. like, okay, in the first one they build bridges onto each other, and they cover up a camera, and they'll conduct electricity, they'll transport stuff. But there's no way a human-sized ant is going to be running around the place and doing the stuff that Scott does. And it is this sort of thing of course they were going to go much further. I mean, in the first one, they already go pretty far. If you, in the first movie, once stuff starts shrinking and getting bigger, once you see ants being, you know, psychically controlled, I'm going to go with, I know that's whatever. At that point, you're either going to go, this movie is ridiculous and I love it, or you're gonna go, this movie is ridiculous and I'm gonna turn it off. And yeah, this movie's, of course it's gonna up the ante, and I absolutely loved it. I thought it was it works so well. The idea that, because at the end of the day, Ant-Man and Wasp are fairly ridiculous characters. These are, I forget, is it Silver Age, or it's, they were, yeah, they're fun, cool, weird, like, since the first one, Tales to Astonish, they're these, it's such a weird idea to shrink a man to ant size and have him riding ants and have him guiding them, and then for him to turn giant. And yeah, it's so out there, but it's so fun when it's done right. And yeah, you're either gonna have a movie where they're like all ashamed of that, or you're gonna have a movie where they dive deep into that and say, "Oh, you think that's ridiculous? Wait till you see this." And I really, really appreciate it. I am so happy we're in a day and age where psychically controlling ants and, what's it called? Trees can move around and speak, even if with a very limited vocabulary, and little, trash pandas can wield assault rifles and, tinker with atomic bombs and such. Just, yeah, I'm so glad we're past, oh, we gotta make a joke about yellow spandex. Just, yeah, I love that we're getting such out there movies. And I forget if I've said it elsewhere, but just in 2015, the MCU was like, yeah, we're gonna put out a movie that is dependent on the audience accepting the concept that human beings can psychically control ants, given the right equipment. And then Justice League comes out in 2017, and they're like kind of ashamed of the whole Aquaman talks to fish thing. I maintain at some point in that movie, yeah, it's not a spoiler to say that this doesn't happen. At some point, apparently in the Aquaman solo movie, there's going to be like big fight scenes where they're like riding, was it sharks or something, and yeah, I feel like in the Justice League movie there should have been at least one scene where Aquaman rides a shark or something. And yeah, again, it's just, the one thing the DCU did, they got a female director and a female titular character before the MCU did. But now, this is kind of also, she shares the title, but with the Captain Marvel movie, yeah, anyway, now, but yeah, seeing the ant play the drum set, and like you see it in the tub with the ankle bracelet. yeah, even knew to put the ankle bracelet in the plastic trash bag next to just and the Cassie and the others and yeah, go through, and man, he's really living like a pig these days, and they're seeing all this, like, there are all these, like, pieces left of like plant, what's it called, leaves or something, and it's like, it's still an ant, so yeah, when it passes by, every so often it's gonna take some bites out of that plant, out of those leaves, and it leaves an impression and of teeth. Yeah, that was really funny, and Cassie's like, there's something on, and she runs up, and the ant is just super chill in the tub there. Yeah, and we see that in the 2 years that passed between the the end of the end of Ant-Man and then the the start of this, and apparently this takes place at the same time as Infinity War. I thought it was going to be shortly before, but I guess I can kind of see. I mean, really, the only thing, I mean, in Infinity War, yeah, I'm spoiling the MCU. In Infinity War, they say Scott is under house arrest, and they're like, we shouldn't disrupt that. We don't want him to have to go to jail. And yeah, I mean, in this, in Infinity War, they think that he is living up to the house arrest thing, but in reality, he is doing these adventures, but he keeps managing to be home when they check on him. And let's see, was there something more that I was gonna, yeah, so, in the 2 years that passed between the end of, I said Ant-Man, the end of Civil War, and then Infinity War. Was it only 2 years? Wasn't it 3? Anyway, in 2 years that passed between... No, he says 3 years. He says he's been there for 3 years, so it must be 3 years between the events of this and Civil War. So yeah. Anyway, they've spent time building this tunnel and this vehicle for the quantum realm. And like in the first movie, at first, Hope is very, it's not very, when she deals with Scott, she's kind of annoyed, and yeah, and Hank is also kind of, are you really this stupid, almost, kind of, but I appreciate that they didn't, the movie does a lot of things that the first one does as well, but I don't think there are too many of them where it just keeps pushing to make it like, and it takes much less time for them to warm up to Scott this time, I would say. And we learn that they just need what's in Scott's head, then they're fine with him going back home. And when I say special, and we see that Sonny knows who Hope is, and from right away, from the moment she's in the suit, Hope is just amazing at the fighting thing. I really appreciate that. I'm glad we didn't have to sit through like her being bad, because we already know that she's good at this. We found that out in the first movie. That's why she was training Scott. And we see, Sonny wants the quantum realm stuff. Basically he feels like he's going to be able to make money off it, where, I think, I'm going to go more into that later. And we get some Ghost versus Wasp from very early on. No. And ex-con security, that's cute. and the heroes lose the lab to Ghost, and they go to Goliath, you know, see if he has equipment that they can, yeah, or ideas, something like that. I really appreciate that. That is the thing when you can make your, it's like with your car keys or something. If you lose your keys, you lose all your keys because they were in the keychain. And yeah, if you can bring around your lab in your car, then if someone gets into your car, they can just grab it like that. Hat and sunglasses are not a disguise. It looks like you're yourself at a ball game. The MCU have, excuse me, have acknowledged that. Maybe they've seen that, like a starter pack meme, like, I am in disguise or whatever, the MCU, and it has, you've got Iron Man from Iron Man 3. You've got Captain America in both the second and third Captain America movie. You've got Falcon from Civil War. You've got Bucky from Civil War, from before they find him. I think. Yeah, I think it's when he's hiding out. All of them, sunglasses, baseball cap, and it is like, okay, you quite like that. And there's a joke in the original script where it's like, once more than one person is wearing that exact disguise, it kind of starts being kind of noticeable. And Goliath kind of taunts Hank. I appreciate that they only really do that one bit where Hank almost punches someone and he doesn't actually go through it. I mean, they stop him, but I can see how it's kind of messed up that in the first movie they have this running joke of him losing control over his anger and punching people in the face, when that was actually kind of kind of a controversy with the comic where he hit Janet. And yeah, then doing the, yeah. And it also wasn't all that funny. And then, they jokingly tell Scott they have this, child's lunch, and then he's like, wait, do you really have that? That was pretty funny. In general, I think the stuff with them saying he's like a child was funny. Hey there, champ, how was school today? He's so cranky. Don't ever touch him again. Hope is much more protective of Hank now. Very, yeah, in the first one, she says some really harsh things to his face, but now, yeah, I really like that they, for all the things that they try to just do like they were in the first movie, maybe bigger, they actually do acknowledge that the characters and their interpersonal relationships have changed. And I mean, I do just briefly want to say, I completely understand people who say that it's illogical and it's character inconsistency that that Scott's ex and her cop fiance, excuse me, that they're so, they're all hugging Scott now. I don't really have a counter argument to that. I think that probably is pretty. I mean, I guess, well, let's see. They know that he went to Germany, so what exactly? I mean, I guess maybe they think that maybe they're Team Captain America, I guess, rather than Team Iron Man. And yeah, I mean, one thing I get is the thing with, I mean, he did make a plea deal, so if he could just get if he could have only house arrest, so he could be with his family. But it is still, I mean, the end of Ant-Man is like, we can respect you, and it's, I mean, they almost say, please don't break the law again. Please don't ruin this, you know. And then he goes and does that and gets 3 years. I mean, it's house arrest, but it's still, you know, he broke the law pretty badly, and then they had to go and glue it back. Yeah, I completely agree. If you, with anyone who thinks that realistically they should be even more angry, yeah, even more angry with him than they were. And I mean, but you know, at least that other time it was the first time he messed up. Now he had a chance to go, you know. So yeah, but the let's see. But yeah, I just really liked it. And then we see that Goliath is working with Ghost, whose father also worked with Hank. Also, I really like how, I mean, do they ever actually call him Goliath? You know, they say early on, oh, I worked with Hank on the Goliath program, you know, and yeah, there you go. That's all you need. Then now you can refer to the character as Goliath. You know, same as how with Falcon, it was, you know, the name of the equipment that he uses is Falcon, and he's the only person still using it, so he's the Falcon. And we get this huge backstory exposition dump with the 3 of them tied to chairs. I do quite like the backstory, but it definitely, I mean, yeah, it's literally just they sit down and spend several minutes just being told all of this background stuff that, I mean, it literally covers like what, 20, 30 years of what's happened, you know. So it is, but yeah, I found, you know, the antagonists in this movie quite compelling. I respect that others didn't, but I really don't see the problem myself. And we find that, you know, they're talking about how, you know, Janet could help heal Ghost, but Hank is like, that is going to kill Janet, and Goliath is, no, it won't, you know, and yeah. And, you know, the Altoid tin was ants as backup. That's, you know, that's why he kept saying, no, you can't have one, not even one. And it's a good, I mean, it's almost like the tank on the keychain in the first one. And we're told Ghost will only survive for a couple of weeks. And then she says she wants to kidnap Cassie. I really appreciate that they didn't have her do so. We already had one of these movies end with the villain threatening Cassie. And it is good to have her say that she's ready to, because that tells you how, I mean, that, you know, think of how she lost everything when she lost her parents as a little girl. And now she's talking about kidnapping a little girl and threatening the girl's parents that, you know, she's going to do something to the girl if the parents don't do, you know, it's I mean, Ghost herself never really says that it's, you know, that it would almost mirror what happened to her, but that is what it, you know, she's gone from being this scared little girl who just wants the pain to stop. You know, she's very close to doing something truly horrible. You know, I mean, it's that thing. Nobody wants to be in pain all the time, but if your idea for a solution to feeling the pain is something that will hurt others greatly as well, you know, at that point it's just, at that point it is selfish. And yeah, I really appreciate it. She was very conflicted, and you can definitely sympathize with her, even if you obviously not agree that, you know, yeah, with kidnapping Cassie or with killing Janet too. But you know, that's also the thing. Apparently, a lot of people think that Thanos was basically, oh, you know, yeah, he's right. He's got the no. His motive is right. His motive is right, but his means are horrible. It is not okay to, yeah, that's not something that I should have to say out loud. And but yeah, I really appreciate that we get to, and it's also Goliath specifically says, if you do that, I will not help you anymore. It's really, yeah, there's a lot to both of the antagonists. Sonny, there's ultimately not that much to, but he's a fun enough character. I didn't mind. Every scene that he appeared in, I enjoyed. I don't necessarily think that he needed to be in much more of the film, but I mean, he lived, so maybe we'll see him again. I could definitely get into that. I like a good story as much as anyone. Well, you were in the most self-indulgent Tarantino movie after all, The Hateful Eight, in case you know, which I still love. I will defend that movie. Now, and we get Lewis retelling, a story. It's slightly different than the first one, but I liked it, and it's like, where is Scott? Well, you see, the place he was in when I met him was a really bad place, and I'm not talking about prison. And we get and he's like, yeah, and then there's that bit with his grandmother who only had one. There's one singer's songs on this jukebox, and every now and then someone would be like, "Wow, you don't have any other songs," and she'd be like, "What? You don't like the one? Adios," and that would be that, and just yeah. And I mean, in the first one, it was almost kind of bookending the film, and it was, yeah. I mean, it was better in the first one, but I think it would have been a mistake to try to bookend this movie in the same way. And let's see. And Janet takes over Scott's body and hacks a PC. She spoofs the router's firewall and goes, "I'm in." For a brief bit, you almost think that Scott is gonna, we see them hold hands at the end of the scene, and yeah, there was a brief bit where I was like, is Scott actually gonna, like, kiss Hank, since it's Janet in Scott's body? And I did get a mild homophobic vibe from it, and I really appreciate that it's not any worse than that, but I still, come on guys, 2018, are we really still doing this? But yeah. I like the gags with the truth serum, and I really appreciate that they gave the ex-cons jobs great development. In the first one, it's kind of the story of how difficult it is to get away from that when that's been your life, and in this we see that you can move beyond that. Even, it's possible that you yourself have to save up money and start your own business in order to make it, yeah. And then, there at the end, apparently that seller buyer, whatever, the dude who wanted home security, like, they saw the card chase, I guess, and they're really impressed, and yeah. I really liked, Cassie. She realizes the aunt is there, and then she runs down, blocks the stairs, and trying to talk the FBI agent out of finding her file. Another step in that direction from the first movie. Perhaps too many barf jokes, especially in one place. Excuse me. And they shrink the lab and are surrounded by FBI. What does FBI stand for anyway? And, Ghost is nice to Scott, but not to Hank and Hope. Very good contrast. Don't laugh. I'd be a great partner. It was, again, such a cute moment. And around here, I noted, I really like the trophy, the world's greatest grandma thing. And Hope lockpicks the handcuffs. She had a pin in her mouth. Very Sarah Connor of her. And Scott frees Hank from capture, reversing the roles in the first film. And the ant GPS era was great. And Hank goes into the quantum realm, and the others you have to keep things safe. I really like the Splinter Cell goggles on Ghost. I demand I mean, I guess by now the Splinter Cell, blacklist is, some years old. But maybe the next Splinter Cell, if we'll get one, which I do hope. I still really, really dig Blacklist, and we'll be replaying it, and we'll be doing more videos on it. I would really like a alternative skin that looks... Actually, wait, do some of the... In the multiplayer, do some of the skins kind of look... I mean, they're not exactly like that, but I would like that. And in the first film, there's one man-sized ant, and that was a real breakout moment. So now there's at least a dozen of them. When Scott runs from Ghost in the apartment, it actually reminded me a lot of when you're running from the husband in the Outlast DLC. What was it called? Whistleblower. Wish Blaster. Witch Blocker. I can't lose you too, says Hope to Hank. Again, a really great moment. I love the car chase. I really love the Stanley cameo. I maintain they're all so good. His car shrinks from in front of him. Well, the 60s were fun, but now I'm paying for it. You got pezzed. When Ghost is in the car attacking Scott and Lewis, Hank, if you had given Scott blasters, that would have gone a lot better. And I like how, when they're in the apartment, Ghost realizes Scott was a distraction, and he's like, to make the audience look at the distraction. First thing you learn when you learn magic. I love the windshield wipers with him there, and then becomes Giant Man, and he kind of he uses the back of the truck as like sitting on it with one leg, and then like not. Do people do that with skateboards? It's something, yeah. And when he's like, when one of Sonny's guys points a gun at him, and he just does that, which is probably also a callback to the bad guy in the first movie doing that to the sheep that shrunk. And Louis chooses a cool car out of the, and enlarges it, and we need a mod for Just Cause or something that allows shrinking and growing of vehicles. It's probably the kind of thing that would very quickly break the engine. Maybe you can't do it with like an open world and with like multiplayer, but just something that would be really, really cool. And as others have noted, most of the best action is seen in the trailers, which, it's not a movie that you necessarily, if you just want an action movie, it's got more action than the first one, but if you watch the trailers, you've seen, if you've watched all the trailers and TV spots, you've seen a lot of the best stuff. We don't spend very long in the quantum realm. It would be very unlike other MCU movies, but I would like one movie that focuses entirely on the quantum realm and is like set there the way, say, The Road is entirely about its vision of the world. This place changes you. I put it here because I forgot to put it earlier. Since Douglas is married to Catherine Zeta-Jones, that is definitely an intentional reference to the, famous entrapment laser scene when Scott and Cassie are going through that. Yeah. Everything hurts. That can make a person very desperate. And Louis' friends get to use tasers, which were used on Scott by the cops in the first one. We also need like a Tekken mod or some kind of fighting game mod where you can shrink and phase. That I don't think would be completely impossible. But yeah, just some kind of fighting game where it's all up close combat, but with shrinking and phasing. I can feel your pain. My mind to your mind. I actually noted that reference even before she went full Vulcan and like, yeah. Actually, the movie almost should have, by itself, made that. This is the same way Infinity War compares that one dude to Squidward and Thanos to Grimace. And Janet helps Ghost with this power that we didn't know she had. That's going to be interesting for future stuff. How much she, yeah. The cops are coming. A lot. All, I think. Everyone. What do you mean, everyone? Everyone. And Sonny admits health code violations at her restaurant, which made me think of Trump, who wouldn't admit such. I appreciate that Ghost and Goliath are still together. And according to the mid-credit scene, they actually are working with the Pims now, rather than trying to steal their stuff and such. It really does sound like the FBI guys inviting Scott to dinner or something. Very funny exchange. Especially how it ends with, like, do you want to go grab a bite? I don't have any plans. And that's something that could easily have come off as homophobic, but it didn't sound like a date kind of thing, just like something friends would do, you know. And Hank and Janet get in the house together by the beach. And the mid-credit scene has them making a smaller quantum tunnel, and Scott ends up trapped in there, but seemingly immune to the dusting that takes the pins. Great cliffhanger. I do want to say, technically we don't know for sure that being in there makes you immune, but since it's possible that he wouldn't have gotten dusted, he might have been one of the 50% that would survive, but it does, you know, him being left in there and us now knowing that you can have some control over it does help set up, yeah, they're really, you know, whether it's time travel or alternate dimensions or what exactly it is, clearly there's something, there's one or two, at least one of those two things going on in Avengers 4, and the quantum realm can be used certainly for time travel, and I can imagine it could be used to get to other dimensions, alternate dimensions as well. And yeah, him being left in there, you know, that's a good starting point for, yeah. I've seen some people say that the plot is nonsense and the like. I honestly never seem to understand what people are talking about when they say that, other than when it's like super obvious. Okay, this really makes no sense. Okay, how we can sum up the plot as, you know, various groups of people want access to the quantum realm for their own personal reasons, track each other down, chase each other to get that access. What's nonsense about that? It's not even that complicated to understand. Now, those who said that the science is nonsense, yeah, I don't think there's any, yeah, I don't know enough to say for sure, but I can imagine that that's, but I mean, yeah, the plot makes complete sense. I don't know if they maybe think that it should be more complex, which I could basically understand. I mean, it is, yeah, a bunch of different people all chasing basically the same thing. I don't understand how that's nonsense. I sometimes I do not grok what other people mean when they use words. I like the climax. I like that the climax involves a car chase. The first one is this heist, very static, not dynamic, and here, yeah. Now, basically everyone in this movie is doing better than they were in the last movie. They're smiling, loving. It's very sweet, and I totally get why some people hated that. And the post credits has the ant drumming whilst the dusting has just happened. You know, we see the, you know, on the TV it's playing the color. So it even turned on the TV, even if it was just gonna sit there and play drums. Man, Scott wastes a lot of electricity like that. Now, Notes taken before watching. You know, the word subtitles is one E off from being a simple anagram of the word subtleties. Now, scenes that couldn't be in... Yeah, this movie has scenes that could not be in a movie that didn't have shrinking, growing, and mind-controlling ants, just like the first one. And this has a much bigger scope. You've got the car chase with the cars flipping over, hitting things. You know, when the first one, it was mostly only people who could shrink and only one wearing suits. And, you know, in most of the first movie, that's only one person. And now it's also cars and buildings that can shrink and grow big. In the Midnight Screenings episode on the first movie, they point out that Michael Pena and the other two are basically comic relief in a movie that's already funny. Personally, it only really bothers me when they keep saying back up with the van near the end. Now, let's see. I don't understand what that means. You know, yeah. I think it helps a lot that these three ex-cons, you know, they help with the heist there at the end, and they're involved in the heist at the very start. Yeah, breaking in the very start. But yeah, other than that, they're not in the movie very much, and because of that, I don't personally find that it gets to be too much. And I do see the point made in the Midnight Screenings. And this fares about the same, I would say. Again, they don't have a lot of screen time. I don't think there was anything they said or did in this. Nah, never mind. And yeah, a lot of sequels do to funny movies trying too hard to be funnier. And I think this one, it definitely tries hard in some parts, and sometimes it doesn't work, but I think the movie keeps to a fast enough pace that it never really feels like you're just sitting and watching something that genuinely isn't funny. There are a couple of times where there's something that, okay, that's a bit that's not terribly funny, but usually it'll move on quickly enough. And there's more action since it's not an origin film. And eventually Lily says that Wasp hits the ground running, which is very true. And I've already talked about how it connects to Infinity War. And yeah, and one thing was, well, you know, whether this would set up, the quantum realm allows time travel, traveling into other dimensions than the quantum realm, thus opening that possibility for fixing the snap in Infinity War, in Avengers 4, and I mean, really, you know that what we find out is that you can live there for decades, and you might get powers, and the place changes you. You know, it doesn't really... I think maybe in Captain Marvel we'll get more of a sense of what it actually allows for. You know, that, I don't know, maybe not, but I do still think that the quantum realm will be a big deal in Avengers 4. You know, before they cast Michelle Pfeiffer, I figured they should probably cast Catherine Zeta-Jones as Janet Van Dyne, since her husband is such a Zeta male. Now, let's see. Yeah, and there are 5 different writers, which can be kind of a bad thing. You know, Spoonie pointed out of Iron Man 3 that it's kind of written by committees, so there's setups that don't get payoffs without setup and such. The abridged script points out that the bad guys explain the plan to the good guys 5 times before they actually understand it. And I was wondering if anything like that would happen here. I mean, you do have bits that feel very much like, okay, this was written by some of them, and it doesn't necessarily connect that much in other parts of the movie, but not really like major scenes the way it is in Iron Man 3. Now, finally a movie in the MCU where a female character gets part of the title. Wasp was one of the founding members of the Avengers. She came up with the name. She was an Avenger before Captain America was. And I do appreciate that in this she is a lead the way that Scott Lang is. I don't I personally wouldn't have minded if it was more her movie than his. As it is, I'd say they share it fairly decently. I don't think that either of them gets much more than the other, but I I mean at the same time we are, you know, Scott definitely needed to be in the movie, and this builds on what he, yeah, where he was in the first one. And I mean, I do see if it was entirely her movie, I think we should spend more time with Janet, because ultimately Hope is, she's not a Mary Sue, but she's so much of a badass that it doesn't, yeah, you know, you have to, the way that they make her interesting, other than the way that they keep her from being a Mary Sue badass, is with the emotional connection, which is primarily to Janet, and also some to Hank. And I really like that she gets to show off her abilities. You know, she's been training for this for years. Is it decades? You know, she's got wings and blasters, and they're used quite well. And yeah, the original Wasp, Michelle Pfeiffer, is not in very much of the movie. And I mean, she never really does anything very Wasp-like. She comes out of the quantum realm and she heals ghosts, and that's basically it. And, you know, other than that, she's not in the suit. And these are the only two Peyton Reed directed films I've seen, and I think they're also the only two movies I've watched that have Paul Rudd in them. And let's see. I think that, yeah, and someone said that you know, the villains, you know, Ghost is not that threatening. Because she's conflicted. I agree she's not that threatening, but she's compelling. It's a movie that doesn't have a supervillain as much as it has antagonists that are compelling. I was never sitting there hoping that we would get rid of these antagonists and get a villain like, you know, an Ultron or a Loki, someone who would do something truly horrible. You know, ultimately, I mean, with Walton Goggins, it's almost like the same thing as with the, you know, in the first one, Corey Stoll was trying to sell the Ant-Man technology. You know, and here it's the quantum realm technology. And just, it doesn't, you know, Goggins never gets in a suit, never attacks, but yeah, I mean, I like Corey Stoll. I like the kind of psychopathic, you know, he's this kind of charming psychopath who'll, you know, 1 minute he's smiling at Hank, and 2 minutes later he's talking about how awful Hank is to Hope, and saying, you know, we gotta, yeah, just he was enjoyable, but I prefer the antagonists of this greatly. In the first one, you needed a villain that had the kind of, you know, it's like with the first Iron Man. so much of the movie is devoted to the training of the good guy that there just isn't that much room for the bad guy to particularly, you know. But yeah, they're such enjoyable characters in this. If yeah, I like both, but I prefer this set of antagonists to the supervillain in the first one. And let's see, yeah, so yeah, Ghost is not threatening, but she is a very compelling character, and you understand why she's willing to do awful things. And yeah, I'm sorry, the idea that Ghost would take Cassie, would kidnap Cassie to try to blackmail Scott, and the idea that she might even hurt Cassie, and she's willing to kill Janet to end her own pain. I guess I don't know what you're. That's horrifying. I don't know why it needs to be bigger than that. Why it needs to be bigger than some of the protagonists and their families being threatened. Yeah. And again, to be fair, the first one, it was just he's going to give the stuff to former Hydra, and they're going to do really awful stuff with it. But ultimately, it's not really. Yeah. And one, I think it was the Joe Blow video review, who said, oh, Walton Goggins played for laughs. I guess a little bit. I thought he was. I mean, I guess maybe not threatening, but I mean, I felt like his. I mean, it's maybe more that he has all these guys who are well armed, and yeah. I mean, if it wasn't for the considerable skills of Ant-Man and Wasp, Goggins would easily defeat them, and yeah, he would. He'd sell it to. Yeah, he'd use it to get rich, and it would do some really horrible stuff. But yeah, both of these, in the trailer for the first one, it's like, if you sell this technology, there's gonna be chaos. And then the trailer shows, Pym Tech blowing up. That was the good guys who did that. We find out in the final film. And in this, they're like, the world's gonna end. And then we see this shot from Ghost's backstory of the building, collapsing with the tech stuff. And really, no one's that. The idea of consequences and the threat here are not to people; they're to the protagonists and their families. But that is harder to sell. And Evangeline Lilly said in an interview that once the movie introduces Ghost, the stakes are so high and the movie just keeps going, keeps getting bigger, and keeps going, keeps getting bigger. And Peyton Reed was inspired by the films After Hours and Midnight Run. I haven't watched After Hours for for the look and feel of Ant-Man and the Wasp. While the first film was more of a heist film, we described this as part action film, part romantic comedy, and while this wanted to be more like Elmer Leonard vibe, we had the villains, but we also have antagonists, and we have these roadblocks to our heroes getting where they need to be. We do the mission, and let's see, yeah, and Pym. Let's see. Yeah, the Pym felt, like the basically he was worried that Stark would get his hands on the Pym particles. In the first movie, he's like, I'm not going to work with Tony Stark because he's going to abuse my tech. And then with Civil War, in this, it's like, I can't believe you went to fight Tony Stark. He could have used your Pym particles, which really, I'm not entirely certain why he didn't. Now, I rewatched the first two Avengers movies, Captain America 2 and 3, and Ant-Man 1 in preparation for this. And I have watched every MCU movie, and except for Black Panther and Infinity War, since rarely watch anything in theaters more than once, and they're so recent, some of the library copies, at least twice each, almost all of them more than that, some way more, and at least once within, I'd say, the last year. I didn't rewatch a ton of them for this one, since I rewatched all of them for Infinity War, so yeah. I rewatched Justice League because I realized that it would be at the library, and hey, I have no idea when we're getting another GCU movie that I would rewatch it for. While I did fully remember that it was a very forgettable and average film, what I hadn't realized was that even this second viewing of the film, it would basically do nothing for me. And I'm not like, it wasn't like I was super tired from the rest of the day and I didn't really feel like watching it. No, I was like, okay, so I'm gonna try to see if I feel like the stuff that I didn't think worked as well, if maybe it'll work better for me this time. But no, I did not get excited. I didn't get into the drama. I laughed some of the same places that I did in the cinema, but that was it. Also, both it and the first Avengers movie have a single featurette on the DVD that the library has. The Road to Justice is the Justice League one. I forget if the one on the Avengers is called The Road to the Avengers. I think it is. That featurette is all about how the MCU movies, have led up to the Avengers and some of the really cool stuff in the movie. They talk about the helicarrier, for example. The one for Justice League barely even gets to talk about the movie itself. I think it's the last 3.5 minutes of the 13.5 minutes that the whole thing is. And before that, they talk about the comics background for the Justice League, the relaunches and such. I guess they weren't that excited about the movie itself, or maybe it's on other DVD extras that are not on the library copy, but it does feel like they're trying to justify why we should be more excited about the movie than we were. But there's so much comics background for it, which is also why that movie should have been much better. And I do really, I have a ton of respect for the background of the Justice League in the comics. And yeah, I'm sorry, just DCU, get your act together. I've read some JLA comics that I absolutely loved, and just the one a member that apparently, like, Martian Manhunter wasn't even, I don't think, even referenced in the entire film. And I get, they wanted to, maybe they didn't want the team to be too big in the very first movie or something. And I think, like, was that guy who wrote, the guy who directed the third Blade movie, he's done some good work, but also some really terrible work. And he's, like, made a joke that, like, people who, comic book readers who like Martian Manhunter or know who he is or something like that are virgins or something. Other people have said this before, but why does he keep writing comic book movies if he hates comic book readers like that? Anyway, yeah, it's like, you know what? Put him in a movie and just refer to him as Manhunter. Don't bring up the Martian thing. Maybe, like Justice League has the, I hear you talk to Vision, I'm rich, and stuff like that. Have maybe, so where are you from? Mars or something like that. Some kind of joke. But other than that, he's a compelling character. He has cool superpowers. Just, I mean, what part of, are you afraid that we won't accept a character in a comic book movie that is, green-skinned, like Gamora? Drax is blue-skinned. So's, can't believe I'm blanking on her name, but Nebula, just, yeah. Anyway, stuff that I noticed on the rewatch of the first movie. Scott doesn't even consider that the suit was last worn by someone riddled with disease. In the cell, Scott puts on the suit faster than I can get just one of my socks off. When Hope shows how well she can control the ants, it's like, would you like some tea with your sugar? Drop your gun. Stop pointing that gun at my dad. Hank takes a bullet and Hope calls out Dad. If he'd have known that, he'd have gotten shot much sooner. It's not a keychain. It's an ocean. And Cassie is very cute, and they do some great unexpected comedy with her. She loves the ugly teddy bear. She realized though that her stepfather would put her father in jail, and goes, "I hope you don't catch him." Every so often, it would cut between the to us life-size, ant-size stuff and actual life-size, and you where you then see how small what's going on is. And let's see. And let's see. Yeah, and the shrinking and growing science is inconsistent and makes no sense. And I've already talked about how this one goes even further into just complete. It's very much comic book cartoon physics in this. Stuff like the Pez dispenser knocking the guy off, and the shrinking the car, driving under the other car, and then growing up, and knocking the other car. I mean, that's other than the shrinking thing, that is what would happen in a Hollywood action car chase also. But yeah, in the first one, they're like, oh, when you're tiny, you're like a bullet, and you have the same weight. If he weighs the same, then how can he run over the gun barrel without the other guy dropping the gun? And if the weight and mass is the same, then how could Hank be carrying around an actual tank, just shrunk, but supposedly still has the same weight and mass in his pockets? All those, it doesn't really make sense, and it's inconsistent. And I feel that that's basically as it should be. I don't think we're going to have that much fun with this kind of stuff if we, if the people making the movie just sit down and say, okay, we need to make it 100% consistent. Don't like Nolanize it or something. Now, yeah, those are all of my prepared notes. I'm not sure I had anything interesting to. Some people have said that it's, what's the point of this movie when the stakes, we need to, what we want to see is what happens after Avengers 3. And other people have said, oh, it's a breath of fresh air. It's very light, and we don't need to. It's not gonna get like super. It's not super serious, which Infinity War was. And yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, if you don't really care, it's clear from the promotion that this is a lighter movie than Avengers 3. And yeah, if you don't want to watch an MCU movie that doesn't directly deal with it, you can just skip this one if that's really what you want. But yeah, I enjoyed it a lot. And I mean, it's so crazy that Avengers 3 and 4 are only 1 year apart rather than 3 years apart. So I mean, what are they supposed to do? Have this be just some more of that, scope and that tone? I don't know yet how Captain Marvel is gonna turn out, but it's got some of the stuff from the first Guardians of the Galaxy film, so it'll be interesting to see how. I doubt it'll be the same tone as Guardians of the Galaxy, either movie, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they what tone they go for there. But I don't think we're gonna get as dark and as huge, as epic before the fourth Avengers film. And I mean, also part of it is that ultimately the Captain Marvel movie, it's the first period piece they do. It's the first time they say this is just set in a completely different time, this entire movie, from the rest of the MCU up to this point. And so yeah, I mean, ultimately, for example, the Korag and Ronan are going to be in the movie. we know that they're still alive by the time of Guardians of the Galaxy 1, which is set in 2014 when it came out. I'm almost certain, because they did that thing that you got to be careful with doing with these kinds of movies, where it said this scene is set in 1980 something, and then this scene is so and so many years after. So yeah, if you add them up, the movie is set in 2014. But anyway, the I guess, yeah, I enjoyed myself. I I think if I had been expecting, if I went in expecting a lot of action that we hadn't seen in the trailers, I probably would have been disappointed. But I thought, the humor worked, the character, stuff worked, the the action worked. I I was compelled by every single major like threat and antagonist. Yeah, I it's not a perfect film, and you can definitely tell that it's trying to be a comedy, and it's a comedy sequel, and it's written by 5 people. But yeah, some have said that Peyton Reed, the director, this time around feels more, he because he already did this once, so yeah, he now feels more at home with it, which I would definitely say. And yeah, and I think that is going to be it. So hope you enjoy watching. I enjoyed knocking that over. I certainly enjoyed recording. See you next time.